What's up guys, Asian here again with another theory crafting video, and today this one's going to be a bit of a throwback. I've already done a video on this topic before, and this is taking a look at armor rarity and how that affects overall DPS. So if you guys go back on my channel, at this point I think it's about 2.5 years ago, maybe pushing 3 years ago, I did a prior video taking a look at purple versus gold rarity armor and weapons. So I'm revisiting this now just because I am seeing a couple of questions here and there, plus of course the 2.5-year-old video, so it's quite a bit ways, quite far back then, so my methods have obviously changed since then, so I figured an update is due for these two particular topics. So today we're going to be talking about armor traits, armor rarity I should say, and how those will impact your overall DPS. Now, as a newer player coming into endgame PvE, very commonly what you'll be doing is you'll be running normal trials to get your trial sets ready. So those would be things like Relequen, Laquestes, Alkosh if you're a tank, and so on. So one of the questions I commonly get by players who are just starting to get into vet trials, perhaps they're on sort of a progression vet trials team that are just starting off with the Craglorns, maybe they're starting to get into the more DLC trials, the harder trials. A common question I get asked is, how does rarity of my armor affect my overall DPS? Is blue stuff good? Is purple stuff fine? Do I have to gold out everything that I own in order to get up to that 70k, 60k, whatever your DPS threshold is for your specific team? In a short, the answer is no, you don't need to upgrade armor as much, and I will be talking about why that's the case, just taking a look at the parses as well as your overall resource and damage numbers. So the overall testing here, as you can tell, I am on my Nightblade, so I did all these tests on a Nightblade. So starting things off first, here is the armor test. So I did all blue armor here, and I used crafted armor because I'm on the PTS. PTS, I'm only able to get gold armor and gold weapons from the boxes, so I had to use all crafted sets. This is fine for most cases. The only case where this probably will differ quite a bit would be if you're using Relequen, because Relequen is a proc. So obviously as your rarity goes up from superior to epic to legendary, that proc damage also increases. So from that regard, it's a little bit trickier with Relequen, but I can't really test it on the PTS right now. So I just did Hunding's Rage and Newman Acolyte were the two sets that I used here. So I did all blue, all purple, and all gold, just to give you guys an idea of the amount of DPS that we're able to pull here. For all of them, I kept on using the same set, so I just used Laquestes, and they were all gold. So the weapons don't matter at all. They're all from the same set, so we're always getting that 129 weapon damage from the two-piece Laquestes sets. Other than that, everything else was pretty much what you would expect to see on your typical sort of endgame PvE meta build, so to speak. Now, in terms of actual damage done, we did about 65.9k, and we're going to take a good look at our max stamina, our weapon damage, our max weapon crits, and crit damage doesn't really change too much. So you can see here that we're sitting at 35,525, 6403, 67.2 for our max for these three values. This next one is with purple gear, so I just basically bumped everything up to purple. Now, there are a couple things that happen when you increase the rarity of your items when you go from superior to epic and from epic to legendary. The first one is if you're all your jewelry traits, the jewelry trait will increase. So Bloodthirsty here increases damage done by 9%, but if we were to go to blue trait, we'll see that it's only 8%. So that's the first thing that differs. Your traits will increase. So Divines, for example, goes from 5.5 to 6.5, all the way up to, when you're all gold out, 7.5. So those do matter a little bit. The next thing is obviously that your armor bonuses differ. So you can see here, let's go to Hunding's Rage. The two-piece is 804 when we have all purple. When we're all blue, we're at 784, and then we're at gold, we're at 833. So the armor bonuses go up as well. Now for the 5-piece, some 5-piece set bonuses don't change at all. So Laquestes, for example, if we were to go from gold down to purple, that 5-piece, when you activate a synergy, you gain Major Slayer for 15 seconds. That doesn't change. So some sets, rarity doesn't really matter as much. Laquestes is one of these sets here because Major Slayer is a named buff. It'll always do that 50% additional damage done to dungeon and trial monsters. And it'll always give it to you for 15 seconds after you activate a synergy. So for some sets, doesn't really matter whether you have purple or even just green rarity because that set proc, a 5-piece, is sort of static, so to speak. It basically gives you some sort of buff, or the nature of the 5-piece just doesn't really change too much. Not necessarily the case for things like Hunting's Rage and New Moon Acolyte. So we can see here with Hunting's Rage, we're sitting at 282 weapon damage with blue, but that gets bumped up to 289 with purple. So those are kind of what happens when you start to bump up your armor rarity. The biggest thing is that all of your armor traits do get bumped up. Now, if you have multiple rarities, let's say you have 2 blues and 3 purples, what the game does is it takes the average. So it takes the full, if you had full purple, it would take those 3 purple and basically the full values and basically multiply that by 0.6, and then it'll take the blue values, multiply that by 40%, and basically just takes an average. So if you have a combination of rarities, it's some sort of average between the max values for those rarities. So for purple armor, sitting at 67K, again, with blue we were sitting at 65.9. And taking a look at our max values, you can see that our max stam, our max weapon damage, and our max weapon crit, they all went up. Crit damage, for some reason, didn't really get reflected here, but it should be pretty much exactly the same. And then again for gold, 67.6k, and again our max stam, weapon damage, weapon crit, and crit damage all went up. So that's pretty much what you would expect to see. And the biggest jump comes from going from superior to epic, so that's blue to purple, and then you get a very small jump when you go from epic to legendary, and that's purple to gold here. We only get additional 600 DPS going from purple to gold, and we get here just over 1k additional DPS from going from blue to purple. If we take the whole thing, so blue all the way up to gold, then we're sitting at around a 2k increase in DPS. Oops, I went too far there. So again, about a 2k increase in DPS, a little bit less than that actually. So overall, while upgrading your armor will give you just a little bit more DPS, I mean 2k DPS is certainly noticeable, it's not really going to make that big of a difference. 2k DPS when you're talking about 65 versus 67k, if it was across all your DPS, you're talking about gaining an additional 16k group DPS, which might be beneficial if you're trying to make a DPS check and you're just barely there, for example. But generally speaking, if you can't afford to upgrade all your armor, don't bother trying to upgrade all your armor. Just do it as you're able to get your tempers. The gap between purple and gold is pretty small here, again, around 600 DPS, and so in my opinion, it's not worth the effort, it's not worth spending the money to do so, unless you do obviously have the means to do so and you are comfortable spending that money to upgrade your armor. What's more important is to save your money for weapons, and that's good, and that I'll show you guys the very large differences between the different upgraded weapon rarities in a future video. But that concludes this video. Hopefully you guys found this informative. Let me know down in the comment section below if there's anything else you would like for me to explore. I am planning on going through some of my older videos, 2 years and older, and kind of updating those to newer standards. So again, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.